Welcome to Channel's Business Globe with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London, where global power, policy and markets intersect. Coming up on today's show, here in London, cocoa took centre stage. At the Cocoa Beyond Borders conference, policymakers and industry leaders examined how sustainability rules and market pressures are reshaping global cocoa supply chains. I'll be speaking with key stakeholders on how producing countries adapt to tighter regulation, compliance demands and shifting trade dynamics. And Africa's private technology sector steps onto the global capital market stage. I'll be bringing you coverage from the London Stock Exchange, where the 80/50 index has been launched, applying public market discipline to some of Africa's most scaled private tech companies and signalling what the next phase of growth could look like. Then later, I'll be looking back at some of the biggest business news stories of the week. But first, former Nigerian oil minister Diezani Alison Madueke has gone on trial in London, accused of accepting cash and luxury benefits from oil industry figures while in office. Prosecutors told Southwark Crown Court this week that Miss Alison Madueke received £40,000 for gardening and Christmas decorations, along with high-value perks, including a £2 million shopping trip to Harrods during her time as Minister for Petroleum. The 65-year-old, who also served as the first female president of OPEC, denies 5 counts of bribery and 1 count of conspiracy to commit bribery relating to the period between 2011 and 2015. Prosecutors say there is no allegation she awarded contracts improperly, but argue she should not have accepted benefits from individuals doing business with state-owned oil entities. The trial continues. To UK politics, around 50 Labour MPs have reportedly signed a letter urging party leaders to reconsider a decision blocking Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham from standing in an upcoming by-election. The MPs have warned Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer that the move could hand an advantage to Reform UK in the Manchester seat of Gorton and Denton, where a by-election is expected next month. Labour's National Executive Committee voted to deny Burnham permission to run, citing the cost of triggering a separate mayoral election and concerns over Reform's growing support. Sir Keir Starmer has defended the decision, saying party resources must be focused on elections. Labour needs to win, while Reform UK leader Nigel Farage says his party's prospects have improved. Now the pressure on Labour comes as Reform UK continues to build momentum through a series of high-profile defections. Former Conservative Home Secretary Suella Braverman has announced she is joining the party, resigning her Conservative Party membership of 30 years. Speaking at a UK veterans event in London for Reform, Braverman said she would represent her Fareham and Waterville constituency as a Reform UK MP with immediate effect. Her move follows recent defections by senior Conservatives, including Robert Jenrick, and brings the number of Reform UK MPs in the House of Commons to 8, as Nigel Farage's party positions itself as a growing force ahead of upcoming by-elections. Well, to assess the political impact and what happens next, I was earlier joined by our Downing Street correspondent Simon Pusey. Simon, I was reading, I think it was in the Telegraph, that Sir Keir Starmer is willing to invest billions in Reform strongholds to stop the takeover. Do you think it's too late?
Yeah, I think it probably is too late. I think the media have for a good year and a half now been talking about reform almost as much as the government, and you don't usually see that. Obviously they are way ahead in the polls of all the other, but they have so few MPs sitting in the House of Commons behind us. I think a lot of people are a bit upset about the amount of coverage they get, but Nigel Farage will be absolutely loving it. And this week we've had yet another defection from the Conservatives.
A big one.
Suella Braverman, who was sacked twice by the government
former
when
Home
she was in the
Secretary.
government. And then the week before that was Robert Jenrick.
Yeah.
Every single week there's another. I think the problem Nigel Farage has got, he's got to pretend that he's anti-establishment. He's not with the establishment. This is going to be a new government. But how can he say this is going to be new with new ideas and they're going to change this around when he's taking all the old people from the old government?
Yeah.
And he's also on record as saying never trust a Tory, and he's taking every single Tory. So I think that's a struggle. But of course, with that brings more publicity every single time they hold a big press conference, and the media lap it up, and at the moment they're well ahead. I think also the problem is he's got so many very ambitious people. You look at Robert Jenrick especially,
Suella Braverman too.
Yeah, exactly. And
the Team Zahawi.
And the leader of the Conservative Party is saying, well, that's not our problem now, talking about Robert Jenrick, because I think he is quite a problematic figure. People know that he wants to be the leader, or wanted to be the leader of the Conservative Party. So, I think it comes with strings attached. I think these people, but at the moment they're sort of running away in the polls, and they are getting more and more people. Big figures, big names coming over to the party.
For our viewers at home, Simon, who only get their British news in sound bites, what's the appeal of reform and what's the fear? And there is a lot of fear, let's be honest. We're seeing what's happening with ICE. There are fears that we could have something similar. But appeal first and then the fear.
I think it's, we've been a two-party system pretty much for many, many decades. And we've got Labour at the moment. We just had 12 years of Conservatives, and people are sort of fed up and unhappy. If the economy was growing and people were getting richer and wages were going up and prices were going down, I don't think we'd have this issue at the moment. But Reform ostensibly are saying this is a third way, this is a new way, we've got to do things differently.
What's different?
I guess, their main thing is immigration and border control, and that's a drum they've been banging for a long time. And we've just had a summer where the Labour Party pretty much didn't sort of put out any new news, and this vacuum was filled by Reform, who are saying, look at all these small boats crossing, and they're basically linking, an economy that's not growing and wages that are stagnant and growth that's stagnant to foreigners coming over, illegal foreigners, and that is kind of like the situation.
That's
I think a lot of people can kind of sort of hear that message, and even though I don't think that's true, that's what a lot of people are, and so I think that is the appeal. It's a new way. Maybe if we stop these illegal immigrants coming over, and getting
Britain
free hotel
will be
spots,
again.
Exactly, Britain will, which I think is totally wrong. But that's the message that seems to be sort of winning at the moment.
But what's
and I
the
think
fear?
Well, the fear is, Nigel Farage. We've heard a lot of things about his allegedly racist past at school, things he said, and then the party. There's lots of councillors who've said various things, and they obviously take a hard line on illegal immigration, and have said they're going to set up something similar to ICE, and then we look over to America and see those scenes and people being shot. So I think that's the fear, but it depends on who you are and where you live and what your situation is, whether people are willing to accept that as a that's a consequence of getting reform and trying a new way. And I think a lot of people are ready to try a different party other than Conservatives and Labour, because that hasn't been working for decades for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Very briefly, got to ask about Andy Burnham, Greater Manchester Mayor. May not be familiar with some of our viewers, but very popular in the UK. Blocked this week from running for an MP. Is this going to, come back to haunt Sir Keir Starmer?
Well, I think, he's a very popular man. He's very verbose. He's charismatic. He's from the north, and he's championing the north, and that works.
He's doing quite well up there as well.
Yeah, he's a very popular mayor, and that obviously works well for a lot of people in the north who feel like it is, the UK is too London-centric. Does just look down here. I think it kind of makes sense in terms of if you're in the establishment, the Labour establishment, to block him, because
why?
Well, I mean, you'd have a whole series of elections, and it's very uncertain at the moment. Keir Starmer's in for at least another 3 years, and nothing can unseat him really unless his own MPs do, and that would be one thing that.
Earlier this week in London, the Cocoa Beyond Borders conference examined how sustainability rules, regulatory change and market pressures are reshaping the global cocoa industry. Organised by International Cocoa Diplomacy in partnership with Nielsen Smith, the event focused on the implications for producing countries, supply chains and global trade. Nigeria's Honourable Minister of Agriculture delivered the keynote address, outlining President Bola Tinubu's priorities around strengthening production, increasing value addition and improving returns across the cocoa value chain. Discussions also centred on sustainability, compliance and market innovation as policymakers and industry players assessed how the sector adapts to tightening international standards.
We're here, this is at the backdrop of the especially the European Union Deforestation Regulation, EUDR. And you could see a lot of panelists from all over Europe that have been here to discuss way forward. For us in Nigeria, we've already set up a task force on EUDR with co-chaired by the Minister of Trade and Industry and myself, in order to achieve the guidelines of the regulation on deforestation by the EU. It's also an opportunity for Nigeria to standardize cocoa production in terms of traceability and standards. So it's an opportunity, really. Sometimes you see regulations that have been a bit, straitjacket you on try to do certain things. But I believe it's an opportunity for us to enhance and uplift the livelihoods of cocoa farmers, especially in Nigeria and West Africa. Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR had declared an emergency on food security over 2 years ago. And ever since, there's no stopping. I mean, there's intentional and deliberate programs for us to achieve not only affordability, but availability of food. In that regard, we have been able to achieve in under 2 years the kind of stabilization of prices of foodstuff, especially staple food. However, we are also faced with other challenges in terms of prices of inputs, and that's, I think, where this is where our next target is, to try to achieve just the way we, reduce food prices. We're also going to reduce input prices so that farmers can be able to derive, income and uplift their livelihood. So this is Mr. President's agenda. He has already mandated us to seek ways on how to achieve stabilization of input prices. So we have done quite a bit, and prices have stayed, even through festive seasons, even through lean times, prices of food have stabilized and have stayed at an affordable rate, even though we see some complaints here and there. At every complaint, because this is a listening government, we try to tackle those areas of concern. But we are also looking at the welfare of the citizens. We have over 230 million Nigerians. I mean, it's a Herculean task, but we've been able to achieve that noise level that was there before. And when Mr. President declared an emergency on food security, that noise level has quietened down, and at least it's no longer a problem. But like I said, we are out there to do whatever that is needful to maintain farmer welfare, as also the welfare of the citizens.
There are so many issues around the cocoa industry over the last 2 years. Price hike, sudden price hike. There was also issues around the EUDR. There are also new developments coming up in terms of funding, financing, and stuff like that. So while there are opportunities or challenges, there are also opportunities. So how do we turn these challenges into opportunities? The EUDR is the European Union Deforestation Regulation, which was supposed to kick in January 1, 2025. But one way or the other, because of certain issues, it was extended to December 2025, but now it's also now been extended to January 1, 2027. The EUDR is about traceability and ensuring that cocoa is not produced in a deforested area prior 2020. So that's what it's about. So it involves a lot of companies or countries or producers and even exporters to come up with data, to come up with due diligence reports that shows that their cocoa is from, Not necessarily areas that are not deforested, but at least deforestation friendly.
Coming up on Channel's Business Global, Africa's private technology sector steps onto the global capital market stage. I'll be bringing you coverage from the London Stock Exchange, where the 8050 index has been launched, applying public market discipline to some of the continent's most scaled private tech companies. And I'll be looking back at some of the biggest business news stories of the week. All of this after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London, where global power, policy and markets intersect. Shortly, I'll be taking you to the London Stock Exchange for coverage of the launch of the 8050 index. But until then, here's a look at some of the biggest business news stories of the week. The European Union and India have signed what both sides describe as their largest ever free trade agreement, covering nearly 2 billion people and around a quarter of global economic output. The deal will slash tariffs on goods, expand access to services and open parts of India's heavily protected agricultural market while maintaining EU food safety standards. Brussels estimates European exporters could save up to €4 billion a year in customs duties. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the agreement shows that rules-based trade can still deliver economic growth and jobs at a time of rising global trade tensions. Meta Platforms is set to test premium subscription plans across Instagram, Facebook and WhatsApp as the company looks to monetize its growing investment in artificial intelligence. According to TechCrunch, the subscriptions will offer access to expanded features and advanced AI tools, including Meta's newly acquired suite of AI agents under Manus. The plans will be separate from Meta Verified and are expected to roll out in the coming months. The move marks a shift in strategy for Meta, which has largely kept its AI products free, even as rivals like OpenAI and Google push paid tiers. The world's biggest TikTok star, Kabi Lame, has become the center of a $975 million deal that signals the growing commercial power of digital creators. Rich Sparkle Holdings has acquired Step Distinctive Limited, a company linked to Lame, with plans to scale his brand using AI, including an authorized digital twin based on his face, voice and behavior. The deal underscores how creators are increasingly being treated as long-term intellectual property assets as AI opens new revenue streams across content, commerce and global platforms. Now to our final topic. The 8050 index has been launched at the London Stock Exchange, aiming to bring public market discipline to Africa's largest private technology companies. The rules-based benchmark applies consistent criteria to late-stage firms that have historically sat outside traditional capital market frameworks. Organisers say the index is designed as a market infrastructure rather than a ranking or investment product, offering investors and policymakers a clearer reference point as African tech companies scale.
People are here to celebrate African innovation. What is happening today is we're launching the African Tech 50 Index, right? It's a rules-based index, composite index that benchmarks Africa's most privately scaled companies. So it is shining a light on Africa's very best, introducing the innovators to global deal makers, ensuring that the signal, the 8050, provides that signal, that visibility for our best performing companies to the deeper pockets of capital, right? The pension funds, the global investors. The ability for anyone in any corner of the world, be it Seoul, be it in Canada, somewhere in San Francisco, you don't have to have those relationships with the companies involved, but you have access to information on these companies. Now that information, as we saw in early stage startup investing, the more the world knew about our technology companies, the more money flowed in. So it's pretty much the same thing that we're saying about our later stage companies. You know, we've got founders that have built companies in conditions that are very, very difficult, lack of infrastructure, you know, the purchasing power of the people they're building it for is little, but still they've thrived. They've built $500 million companies, $3 billion companies, $2.5 billion companies. So it's letting the world know about this. So it's an index in every sense, judged by ISCO. It's been aligned with ISCO standards, which are the world standards for indexes. It's been in terms of how it runs. You don't apply to the index, it's done by a methodology. The methodology is set in stone, repeatable, which is always important. There's 6 pillars that drive the methodology. They're hard gates that really judges who qualifies or who doesn't. And importantly, there's a governance that enforces the methodology. The governance is independent. There's a Capital Markets Readiness Council, a methodology index committee. Now that deals with the rules, the scoring, etc. And the Capital Markets Readiness Council deals with market readiness and ensuring that these companies tick a number of these boxes.
It's time to hit the button and open London's market.
It's Africa, it's tech, but it's also really the importance of the Africa Tech 50, which is a composite index that basically showcases the 50, the top tech companies that are ready to go public if they want to, and that means that they have the right valuation, they're focused on providing the necessary disclosures, that they have revenue, they can have liquidity, and so much else. But I think what is significant, and for me as a former regulator, is that this index is basically on the basis of the IOSCO, International Organizations of Securities Commission, that regulate most of the capital markets around the world, the standards that they provide. So it's a credible one, and that means that it gives comfort to any investor, whether they're in North America, whether they're in Asia, whether they're in Africa, or whether they're here.
BTA and other people have put together the 80/50 index, and this is a first step for us to try and unearth and provide a really, really interesting structure for identifying the top 50 African tech companies. So it'll be an index which will be a really good indicator of the innovation that's happening on the continent. And then we've also been talking about launch at the London Stock Exchange of a new private market, where if somebody comes in on the 80/50, they're potentially on the pathway to being able to raise capital on the private market at the London Stock Exchange. And then ultimately, what we want is a IPO in London of an African tech company that blows everybody away.
The value of delivery from media to lessons from technology, hence our motto, our word is our bond. Today and every day, these are the values behind numbers. And they're the reason
we've been at this since 1999, okay? And for us to get this far is a milestone. It's a critical milestone for quite a number of reasons. We all talk about unicorns, we talk about different startups making it to the top and everything else. But we all know the ultimate is the London Stock Exchange. If you can get that far, then you've gone as far as anybody cares to go. It's Home Plus. All right, that's the best way to think of it. Home Plus. You can't get here if you haven't done it at home. Charity begins at home. So we're talking of the tech companies that have risen to the top at home. This is stepping up to the global stage.
I think it's exciting just because it gives a lot of awareness to African companies. The association with the London Stock Exchange obviously, creates a lot of buzz, as you would imagine, and just the general concept of a potential listing, even if it's not now, but in the future, I think it's very noteworthy, and there's just the innovation around the index itself. I think it's very commendable. Really great work that's been done by the organizers.
I believe in Africa. There's something that's happening over there. There's something, it's the future of the whole world. The challenge that we have today is that, and the trust that we need to bring to African continent. I have visited the 54 countries of Africa, and I know that there's lots of things to be offered over there. And we are at the 100% mark. Whatever we can create in the future, we'll resonate big time. Whatever we can create now, we'll resonate big time in the future. So that's what's my hope, is to be over here to support it from not just the money prospect, not just the capital, but bringing the connection, the awareness, let's say the new prospect of Africa, the thing that I see, the continent that I fall in love with before I put my money in it.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today. But as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channels Business Global. Goodbye.